Hello, I'm Bernard Savage. I'm one half of Size 10.5 Boots. We are a specialist business development agency that works just with professional service firms. And within that, the intellectual property market is one of our biggest market. I've lost count of exactly how many IP firms we've worked, but it's in the region of 30 or more, both in the UK and across Europe and further afield still. So what I'm going to do is share with you some practical tips on how you can prepare for client meetings and pitch presentations. And what I'm hoping that you're going to get out of this is you're going to feel a lot more confident about any future meetings you get involved with. You're able to prepare effectively, and importantly, you get the outcomes that you want. When I talk about meetings and pitching, it takes in many different scenarios. It could be a contact with an existing client, might be a telephone inquiry that you're handling, it could be an informal contact, perhaps outside the office, coffee meeting, or it may be a more formal event, such as a beauty parade or an interview panel where you're part of a team involved with formal procurement. It may be face-to-face, or increasingly in the current environment, it may well be via a video conference call. But either way, it's all about you wanting to present the best, create best possible impression with a contact, whether that's existing contact or a prospective new client. I want to start off by focusing in on some key principles that have applicability in absolutely any pitch scenario. These principles an understanding of them and application will help you be more effective in any client contact. Here's the first one, and it's first for a very good reason. People buy on emotion first and logic second. So what does that mean? Well, it's taken as a given that when you engage with a client, that you have the technical credibility, that you have the necessary IP skills. But the reality is, so do your competitors. And what people are looking for is actually to make a connection with you. So it's really important that you create a positive impression that people like you. So what does that mean? How does that work? Well, it's really about first finding common ground with people in any scenario. You need to be liked by your client and prospect. If you're not, they'll find someone else who technically has the same capability as you, but perhaps there's a closer emotional connection. And practically, when you're engaged with clients or you're pitching, think about how you can bring things to life rather than get sucked into all the technical detail. What stories have you got that elucidate points, case studies, giving practical examples that really bring things to life? Certainly a lot more than any bullet points will do. Point two. Your previous client's experience counts for more than what you say about your capability. What does that mean? Well, anybody clearly in a pitch situation, I would hope, is going to talk positively about what they do and their capability. But the reality is what the client's interested in, what your prospect is interested in, is what other people are saying about you, what is said when you're not in the room. But the good news is there's things that you can do that's going to help you, that's going to give you the best possible chance to create that positive impression and ultimately build either a closer connection with an existing contact or indeed win new business, perhaps with a prospect. What are the things you can do? Case studies, client testimonials, LinkedIn recommendations, video endorsements, referrals, introductions. These are all ways that you can get people effectively marketing on your behalf, either directly or indirectly. And do be proactive about this. Do ask people that you know for introductions. Don't get hung up about winning work. Focus your energy and just having conversations, creating positive impressions with people. And if you have had positive feedback from clients in the past, have the confidence to ask them whether they'd be so kind as to write 2 or 3 lines as a LinkedIn recommendation, because that's your shop window, and that's really going to help you to win more work in the future. Point 3, it takes time to build trust, so it's important to focus on the relationship, not the check. What do I mean by that? Well, this is about really investing time to get to know your client, recognizing that it can often take some considerable time from an initial conversation to actually get an instruction. Now, I can't put a definitive timeline on that because it could be days, weeks, months, even years in some instances. But understand that business development done effectively is a process. So, there are no prizes for trying to be to run before you walk. Invest time to get to know your client. This means in the initial stages of any contact, it means building rapport. Now, in the first few seconds of a contact, that means good eye contact, smiling, warm gestures, and avoiding the temptation to present your solution or to sell too soon. And actually, it may surprise you to learn that some of the most effective business developers in IP firms are actually quieter, more reflective, more introverted people, because those people tend to be better listeners. It's really important throughout the process, but particularly in the initial stages of a meeting, ask questions, ask smart questions, probe and get to what the heart of the real issue is. Listen attentively to the answers, and the benefits of that are not only would you learn stuff which will help you to give a better technical solution, it will also mean the client feels listened to, so they're more likely to feel positive towards you, and what you've learned enables you to follow up effectively, and follow up really is one of the key requirements of effective business development. Let's look a little bit closer at this idea of knowing your client. What does it actually mean? Fundamental to this is the concept that preparation is the key to success. That means a combination of both desk research and primary consultation. So what can you do exactly in terms of that preparation? What might that look like? Well, starting point is to really be clear internally within your own organization. What's the history of the relationship with that firm? What people have done what, both on the patent side and on the trademark side? What's the IP portfolio? Do use LinkedIn as a resource. It's very, very helpful to get more insights on your clients. Often you'll find things on LinkedIn that aren't necessarily in the public domain on the firm's website. So do connect with people that you're having contacts with, and do look for clues to find some common connection. It goes without saying, you need to read the client's website. I always feel embarrassed putting that in there, but it amazes me some people don't even do the basics. Do subscribe to your clients' publications. Get to know what they're saying. How are they marketing themselves? Read what your clients read. This is really important. Big mistake that many IP professionals make is they focus their reading time on the IP publications, which is fine, but that should be in addition to reading what your clients read. So if they're an automotive company, they'll be reading an automotive publication. If they are in the farming agricultural sector, they're probably reading Farmers Weekly. It's very easy to know what your clients are reading. One, you can ask them. Two, you can have a look around, see what publications align with the reception of clients' offices. Or thirdly, just Google the particular sector, magazines, and the country you're interested in, and you'll find all the answers there. I think the final aspect of meetings, and this is often overlooked, particularly with informal contacts, is people don't give due consideration to what the meeting objectives are. You should be really clear at the outset before you go into any client meeting of exactly what success looks like. So that means knowing what it is you want, the outcome of that meeting. And that's not as obvious as it may sound, because it probably isn't to get an instruction. Business development is a process, and success in a meeting is largely about nudging it forward, small steps. But what is that small step that will demonstrate you've nudged the conversation forward and moving towards your ultimate goal, which is to create more work? So, sticking with these key principles, number 5, be prepared for surprises. What do I mean by that? Well, with the best preparation in the world, sometimes things do go wrong. And this is about you having a plan B and even a plan C. So if, for example, you're planning on using a PowerPoint presentation, recognize that batteries blow, that the technology fails you, that I don't know, the Wi-Fi will go down. Always have a backup plan. Don't be overly dependent on one particular channel. Things don't always go to plan. How will you react if the technology isn't working for you? Number 6, this is another one that's often overlooked, even by very experienced IP professionals. And this is what I call the call to action. What do I mean by call to action? Well, in any meeting, and there's no exception to this, informal or formal, you want to affect change. You want something to happen next. But too often what people fail to do is to provide any specific next step. So they might deliver a very impressive presentation, and then it just finishes with, has anybody got any questions? And then perhaps a phone number at the back of a slide deck. That isn't enough. You've got to ask yourself, what is it exactly you want to happen next? What exactly do you want the client to do next? And then make it easy for them to do that by providing very clear and transparent actions. Give them different ways to contact you. Some people prefer the telephone, some email, some increasingly today, video conference is an alternative, but give people options. 7, if I was to be asked in the 15 years of managing my own business at Tenandahalf, what 3 biggest things I've learned that's enabled me to keep the business going and growing, this would definitely be my top 3. Follow up again, and follow up the follow-up. I cannot emphasize this enough. Most, probably all meetings require some kind of follow-up. So you've got to stay on top of that. You've got to be have initiative. You've got to be proactive. Email meeting summary. Is there a follow-up call or meeting? Is there additional information you could provide to again nudge that conversation forward? Can you connect with them on LinkedIn if you haven't already? Perhaps it's about inviting a contact to an event, introducing a colleague. There's all sorts of possibilities. I've just given you a flavour of some of them, but there's got to be some follow-up. This is about keeping a prospect warm, keeping a client conversation positive, because it's the case, unfortunately, that time will kill a lot of deals. You will go off the radar, and that warmth dissipates over time. So you've got to seize the initiative and think, right, what can I do next to build on this positive contact that I've had? And get creative, think laterally. It isn't always work related. It could be that you've picked up on something in a client contact to do with an interest that your contact has, whether that's sport, holiday, whatever it is, and then you see something that you might share with them and say, saw this and thought of you. It just gives people a little reminder that you haven't gone away. And it also shows your human side, and this is really, really important. Demonstrating your human side will give you an edge versus some of your competitors. Okay, so how do you respond in writing to inquiries, whether those are informal, perhaps a web inquiry, or it's a more formal inquiry that requires a tender or a business proposal? I could talk on this subject for hours, but we only have minutes, so I will cut to the chase and highlight the big ones. Here's number 1. In what you write, focus on the word you, not we. People have got a tendency to talk about themselves. We have X number of partners. We have X number of offices. We can deliver this service and this service and this service. That's not what people are interested in. They're interested in themselves and their situation. So you've got to turn it around. You've got to frame things from a client's perspective. And I'd really encourage you, when you've written any document, whether it's a quick email response or a more formal document that involves many pages, have a look at how many times you've written the word you and how many times you've written the word we. Because I know from experience, if you've got too many we's and not enough you's, you won't get the instruction. Second key point is to focus on the benefits, not the features. What do I mean? Well, the client's not interested in the nitty-gritty of a patent or a trademark or a design matter, copyright matter. They're interested in the outcome, which for them might be to do with selling a business. It might be to do with the future value of that business. It might be to do with protection or a growing market share. It might be about attracting investors. Those are the things that are important to your clients, not the technical aspects of a trademark. Do personalize it. This comes back to my human point. People don't want to feel that you've just copied and pasted someone else's proposal and changed the name of the organization. Make it feel as though it's written specifically for that particular client, that you're talking to them. And that does require that real insight, really knowing the client. It also means making it relevant. What do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to share with you a short personal story from a mistake I made many years ago, where early stages of my consultancy, and I was pitching to a law firm. It was in Norwich, and at the time I was doing a lot of work with a large law firm, happened to be Adelshaw Goddard, and I was proud of this. I talked a lot about the work with Adelshaw Goddard, and the feedback I got was, well, Adelshaw Goddard are a great law firm, but not really relevant to us. We'd be more interested in knowing what experiences you've got working with a high street law firm in Bury St Edmunds or I don't know, Thetford, because that's relevant to that organisation. In terms of structure, again, it builds on this point about looking at it from the client's perspective. Avoid the temptation to home in on your firm. Start with the client's position, demonstrate you understand the client, then move on to the outcome they're looking for before you propose your IP solution. And only at that stage do you highlight why it to you would be the right choice. And then you back it up with the case studies and client testimonials, moving to your next steps, your call to action. Now, in face-to-face contacts, it's not exactly the same because it requires a softer, more human approach. This is really about getting that emotional connection, because the client is thinking, as well as can these guys do the job, they're thinking, are they going to fit in around here? And if this interview or the face-to-face contact is after submission of a written document, don't just regurgitate the written document. Make it feel that you're giving them something else. Make it feel like it's a conversation. And if you are presenting in a more formal context, again, there's lots and lots I could say about this, but I'm going to highlight one point because I think it's the most important point. Engage, engage, engage. You will see the slides that support this video blog. They're highly visual. There's a reason for that, because it helps engagement. People will remember the presenter long after the content, so make sure that whatever you present looks good. Make sure people want to work with you after the event. Now, in the case of a more informal meeting, this is pretty much a balance of the two things I talked about. It's the harder stuff, i.e. your credentials, mixed with the more human stuff, the interpersonal skills. You've got to do both. And in that scenario, it's really about letting your client lead the conversation and listening. And don't be concerned if you find that your client's doing as much as perhaps even 70% of the talking. That may seem strange, given it's a pitch situation or it's a meeting where you want to get something across. But actually, if the other party's talking for 70% of the time, it means they like you, they're comfortable with you. It means you're learning things, assuming you're listening, and that insight helps you do what you must do next, which is follow up. So what do you do if you're asked a question you don't know the answer? That's a very common situation for more junior attorneys and students, assistants, people earlier stages of their career. Well, the first thing I'd say is don't panic. You don't need to know the answers for everything. What I call my ask a friend option is, this is really about in a situation where perhaps this works really well if it's a bigger meeting, face to face, lots of people in the room. You can deflect. You can say, that's a really good question. Has anybody in the room had that experience? Or look to a colleague. It's not a sign of weakness if you don't have all the answers at your fingertips. In fact, arguably, it can be to your advantage, because it's not knowing the answers enables the follow-up to be easier, because you've got something to anchor the follow-up to. You can say, that's a really good question. I can't give you an accurate answer here and now. What I can do is I can come back to you by 5 o'clock tomorrow. Will that be okay for you? Now, if you then come back to them by 3 o'clock tomorrow, you've exceeded expectations, you demonstrated you're somebody who does what you say you're going to do, and you've kept the conversation alive, you've nudged it forward. So actually, not knowing an answer can sometimes be to your advantage. Now, it may well be that this session has raised lots of questions for you, and that's absolutely fine too, because I'm happy to answer those questions offline. You have my contact details there in front of you. I'll leave those for you. And if there's anything that I can help or my colleagues at Tenandahalf can help with, we'll gladly do so. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I wish you every success in your client meetings and client pitches.